race yesterday, which went the way of Matthew Armstrong. Today's earlier race was won by Charles Clark. That was his maiden victory in these cars. It was Matthew's first win yesterday. And so it's the sort of showdown, the shootout between the two of them going into the third 20-minute race of the weekend. There are points in the championship given for race positions, but also for pole positions as well. And it means that coming into this, Charles Clark now has a championship advantage over Matthew Armstrong. In the AM contest, it is Carl Cavers who has taken the 2 wins, in fact, there over the course of the weekend, and so he very much is the AM championship leader. It's a 20-minute race rather than a set number of laps. They are about to set off for their formation lap as you look at the back of William Twire's car, and very shortly the green flag will be fluttered to allow the cars one last opportunity to get some warmth into the Michelin rubber. John White was in the gravel in the earlier race. He's last on the grid here because it's the results of race 2, and he didn't finish, so he starts last as the course car leads them away down then to Copse Corner, and Charles Clark it is, starting on pole for Stuart Parker's eponymous team, Team Parker Racing. Very much the man to beat, really, given how well he went in race 2, building a gap late in the race. Matthew Armstrong, winner of yesterday's race, starts with him at the front of the grid, lining up third. Harry Foster, who has taken 2 third places over the course of the weekend, and Steve Roberts, who's taken 2 fourth places. Matt Greenwood is next. He's had a brace of 5ths, and Toby Trice 2 6th places, although admittedly one of those was courtesy of a penalty for track limit abuses that dropped him down the order in race 2. Carl Cavers is next on the grid, starting 7th, and he's finished 7th in both races thus far this weekend, winning the AM contest both times. Rupert Laslett comes next on the grid. He's 2nd in the points already in AM, ahead of Tim Presic and then Jason Pelosi, who will start 10th on the grid. 11th is William Twire with 12th and then an 11th to his name, so looking to go yet better in race 3, and with an 11th and a retirement, John White rounds out the grid. As I say, he was in the gravel at Beckett's, in fact, in that second race of the weekend. Everybody, of course, for a one-mate championship with the same base car, but operated by different teams. The Porsche 718 Cayman GT4 Club Sports 3.8 litre 6-cylinder mid-mounted engine, 425 horsepower, 6-speed PDK gearbox optimised for racing, Michelin tyres, and the cars weigh in, including the driver, in fact, at 1,400 kilos. It's a good championship, even though numbers are still growing. Partly it's proven by the fact that every year there are newcomers to Porsche racing, and also by the fact that people graduate up to the Carrera Cup GB ranks or into international GT racing. So it's in its 3rd season. The previous 2 years rather COVID affected, so there's much optimism in this year where people can actually get to races properly, and there's more freedom that the championship can attract more of an audience, not only from fans but also drivers and potential drivers. It is a pro and an AM format. Well, the pros can be experienced, or they can be silver graded career racing drivers who want to go into GT racing, and this is the perfect opportunity to learn. For the AMs, well, they're good cars to give you lots of track time in, so it appeals, or it should appeal, to both sides. The all-white car there you can see is Rupert Laslett, who is one of a number of drivers who's made that switch from Ginetta racing into the Cayman series for this year. William Twire is a total newcomer, no racing experience until yesterday, and he's acquitting himself nicely, getting more confident and therefore faster every time he takes to the circuit. So down towards Brooklands they come, 20 minutes rather than a set number of laps, and in a few moments' time they will get themselves into position. There is Charles Clark then, having raced in the championship last year. He actually came into it, in fact, at the very end of the previous season, did the last weekend here at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit in November in pretty Arctic conditions, and he will line up on pole with Matthew Armstrong with him at the front of the grid, who raced again in the championship last year, 3rd in the pro class, very successful karter in his youth. Harry Foster starting 3rd on the grid, as you look at Toby Trice there going up to the line. Harry Foster debuted at Donington at the end of last year. Dad Nick, former touring car racer. Brother Louis Foster, American single-seater racer these days. And then 4th on the grid, Steve Roberts, BMW Compact Cup champion, Formula Ford champion. Very rapid driver is Steve, another one moving from Ginetta's into Porsches for this season, driving for Simon Leonard's Redline Racing squad, but had a good result earlier on in the day in British GT, Porsche team moving into GT ranks as well. The last couple of cars slot into place on this 1x1 staggered grid, and with Charles Clark's orange car on the outside of the grid, which is the pole position line, he looks at the 5-second board, which is shown by the officials. Now all eyes on those lights that go red. And 20 minutes of racing gets underway then as they blast away. Good getaway by Clark, but can, from the inside of the front row, Matthew Armstrong go with him? The answer is no. He's got a slot in behind. And to the outside line there, Harry Foster goes round the outside of Steve Roberts, so he's third. There's also Matt Greenwood's black and gold car in that mix as well, trying to get up alongside as they run up towards Maggots for the first time. But a good getaway by Clark and Armstrong as way up the curve. There goes Greenwood, brick car graduate, but he's going to slot in behind the blue and white car that's fourth of Steve Roberts. So third there, the black and orange livery Harry Foster, and the top two that have dominated the weekend and are doing so again on this first lap now. On to Hangar Straight. It is, as you can see, Charles Clark in the lead. It's Matthew Armstrong in second place, and a small gap opening up already to, in third place, Harry Foster. Fourth behind him is Steve Roberts. In fifth is Matt Greenwood, under attack, look, because to the inside line goes Rupert Laslett, absolutely determined to try to take at least one AM win this weekend. Toby Trice is there after a not-so-great start, and Rupert Laslett trying to get through the pro ranks and therefore give himself a bit of a cushion over Carl Cavers, who's at the back of that queue there, the red, white and blue Valuga run car, and round the outside of Toby Trice goes Rupert Laslett. Bit of a twitch from Matt Greenwood ahead of him, but he sorts that out, so there's one car at least between the leading AM pair at the moment as the drivers come past the wing, one or two wide in the background. So who was that getting a little bit giddy? That was Jason Pelosi, I think, who has moved into Porsches after seasons of racing Clios at 750 Motor Club events. Number 23, he goes through. Tim Kresick battling with him, but a really good first lap this by Charles Clark. Father Steve, former GT racer, and he comes now up through the loop towards Aintree, already starting to edge away from Matthew Armstrong. In third place, Harry Foster, and then next in the queue, Steve Roberts, as the cars accelerate down Wellington Straight for the first time. They've had a lot of track time this weekend. This is their third race, of course, on top of the qualifying session. So it's interesting to see how drivers are progressing over the course of the weekend as they become more confident, because there are lots of newcomers to the grid, which is really heartening to see. John White there has certainly shaken off William Tewaya, and he's on the back then, as you can see, of Jason Pelosi as they come down through Brooklands. John White, track day enthusiast, and again, this car, which is a turnkey GT4 style race car, absolutely perfect for those that want to move from track days into circuit racing. Charles Clark leads the way at the end of lap one from Matthew Armstrong, 0.8 of a second. The margin, the gap at the end of race two was a rather large one. It was over 3 seconds because Matthew Armstrong fell away late race. 10 laps we're anticipating. That's what they've achieved in the previous two races on the Grand Prix circuit, the full Grand Prix circuit at Silverstone, as John White goes through Copse, and out of Beckett's comes Charles Clark with Matthew Armstrong hustling along behind him. But what's he going to be able to do, if anything, now to make a move against the race leader? It was a little bit elasticated, that gap, for the first 3 quarters or so of race two earlier on in the day, until Charles Clark eventually asserted himself and pulled clear. What's going to be interesting this time around is to see whether Harry Foster can get up with them, because in race two, Harry had to battle his way through a bit of traffic, and then when he did get clear of it, he ran out of time to catch the leaders. Now he's doing it pretty much from the start, running in third place. Time is on his side to go after the top two, as down through Vale there, Rupert Laslett leading the AMs, but right on his tail is Carl Cavers. So that cushion of a pro between them didn't last long, did it? Carl Cavers more experienced because he's raced in this championship for the last couple of seasons. He's right on the back of Laslett then now as they come through Club, out of that right-hander onto Lewis Hamilton Straight and down towards Abbey. Lap number 2 we are on. Clark to Armstrong was 0.8 of a second for the race lead. For the AM lead here, it was only just under 0.6 starting this second lap. Out of Farm they turn, and now on to that tight right of Village. Carl Cavers right on the tail of Rupert Laslett, and actually it took him quite a lot of the opening race today to get onto terms with Rupert Laslett. Well, here, despite the traffic being there on the opening lap, he's actually made short work of it, and so easily and early taking the fight to Rupert Laslett here. Out of Aintree, onto Wellington Straight. Great noise these cars make. And they run down towards Brooklands, the left, then you set the car up for Luffield, that long looping right that brings them into Woodcote Corner, up towards the line. There is Rupert Laslett still hanging on to his AM class lead, but only just hanging on to his AM class lead as the overall race leaders come up towards the line. Clark still ahead of Armstrong, and then Harry Foster in third place as you look at the back of the AM competition. Up through Luffield they turn. Now, Harry Foster third has just done the fastest lap of the race. He flicks through shot there at Copse Corner, but Harry Foster now lapping fractionally faster than the two ahead of him, and this really is his best chance of upsetting that domination, really, of Clark and Armstrong this weekend. Rupert Laslett turns through then in the lead of the AM class, 7th place overall. Rupert Laslett heads towards the Beckett's S's for the third time. The 54-year-old, the Ginetta G40 AM Cup champion last year with 11 wins, and now graduates to the Porsche Visit Cayman Islands Sprint Challenge Great Britain. Out of the Beckett Sesses they come. So big squeal of tyres from somebody there. Have they survived it? Look for a yellow flag. It wasn't Laslett, it wasn't Cavers. Now rejoining behind them, Tim Kresick. I think it was him that must have had a bit of a moment. Ran onto the runoff tarmac on the outside of Beckett's and then skips back onto the road at Chapel Curve. So Rupert Laslett turns through. Right behind him remains Carl Cavers, and the pair drop down Vale, heading towards the left at the end of it, and then the right of Club Corner on this lap number 3. So Foster, fastest man on the circuit, quicker than the two ahead in Sector 1 and quicker than the two ahead pretty much in Sector 2. Certainly he's closing on Matthew Armstrong in the second sector. So Harry Foster in third overall is one to watch, and so is this great battle for AM honours. Laslett to Cavers, the Veluga car, team that's been busy running in this championship and British GT today, in second in the hands of Carl Cavers within the AM contest here. And again, Carl a little bit more vigorous really through farm, so he arrives on a different line than does Rupert Laslett and has to slot back in as they get to Village. They'll hit Wellington Straight in a moment, down which come the race leaders, and as you can see, in third place there is Harry Foster. Fastest lap of the race to his credit. That's what the little purple background to P3 in that timing tower suggests. And Foster then closing on Armstrong, who in turn is not really dropping away much from Charles Clark. 0.6 of a second between them at the end of the previous lap. This is the end of lap 3 of 10. Up towards the line they come, and Charles Clark once more just edging clear, looking the stronger as he goes through. Now that last lap from Foster, quicker certainly than Armstrong, but Charles Clark a 10th up the road, so he's marginally quicker than Foster, but second and third is coming down. Only a little, it's 0.9 of a second. In fourth place is Steve Roberts, who's a little bit in no man's land at the moment, the Cambridgeshire driver in fourth there, because he's not quite catching, but nor is he being caught. So he's clear for the moment of Matt Greenwood, but he's not got the pace to stay on the back of this car of Harry Foster, a little bit like we saw in the earlier race today. So there are the three leaders, as way wide in the background goes Roberts. Onto Hanger Straight. It is Clark, it is in second place Armstrong, in third is Foster. It was 1.97 seconds covering that top three when they came over the timing line, and Steve Roberts there turns his way through Stowe Corner, the Red Line Racing entry, again in the pro class, drops down Vale for the fourth time of asking, and Steve Roberts, who's had 2 fourth places this weekend already, would rather like something different for the last race of the weekend as he powers his way out of Club Corner. Grabs a gear, runs it up onto the curb on the outside of the road. Steve Roberts, who was a very successful Formula Ford 1600 racer in the early noughties, more recently multiple champion in BMW Compact Cup racing before he came into Ginetta's and then Porsches, and right on the limit out of farm there, the car really sliding underneath him, Matthew Armstrong, so the commitment is there, very definitely. There's Steve Roberts in that fourth place as he comes up towards the loop now. Silverstone Grand Prix circuit, a long lap, and with 11 3/4 minutes on the clock, he's about to blast his way out of Aintree. The road opens up here, and Carl Cavers has still not found a way past Rupert Laslett for the lead of the AM class, but not for the want of trying. Those two could barely be closer as they come out of the loop now. Rupert Laslett has certainly learnt a few tricks in how to defend against Carl Cavers over the course of the weekend, and he needs to put them all into practice right now. Down Wellington Straight, Cavers thinks about the outside, thinks about the inside. He wants to try to apply pressure to Laslett and force a mistake, which might well come as Rupert tries to turn the front of the car in and find the clipping point then for Brooklands. This is Luffield, long right-hander that loops round towards Woodcote now, back onto the throttle. The car's come out of the corner with Cavers better on the gas. He looks to the inside line. Rupert Laslett defends as they come through Woodcote absolutely together. Next opportunity for Carl Cavers is up the inside line going into Copse. Is he going to be able to do it? Not there, he's not, so stays behind, starting lap 5 now. Behind them for third in the AM battle, as he has been all weekend, Tim Kresick ahead of Jason Pelosi, and then John White with William Twire, still learning about the car, learning about Silverstone, learning about racing. He is at the rear of the queue, but getting more confident every lap and getting faster therefore as this AM lead battle comes out of the Beckett Sesses. Rupert Laslett giving away lots in terms of experience of these cars to Carl Cavers, but making his class leading entry from Raceway Motorsport as wide as possible to prevent Cavers from finding a way through. Down to Stowe they come. Carl Cavers, if he was thinking about making a move, certainly doesn't commit to it. And they turn right, and they turn out of Stowe now onto Vale. Now, this is the situation for the overall race lead, where Harry Foster looks like he's dropped off the back a little bit. Last lap through, Matthew Armstrong did do the fastest lap of the race, 2 minutes 10.935. And in the second sector of this lap, Charles Clark has done an absolute best. So both of those top two drivers now turning the wick up a little bit and trying to stretch the advantage not only over each other, but also to get away from Harry Foster, who is there in third place. We're into the second half of the race now. The clock ticks on down. This is lap 5 as the cars come to Wellington Straight once more. Way out wide in the background goes Steve Roberts, and there Rupert Laslett is hanging on to position, although Carl Cavers goes to the outside heading into the loop. He needs to get the undercut now and get that tighter inside line out of the corner into Aintree, but it does not present itself, and so Rupert Laslett hangs on to position. These two have had a great brace of battles over the weekend, and it's another one happening here, and it looks rather good for the championship season between the pair. Down towards Brooklands they come. Carl Cavers again sits in the wheel tracks and actually makes a small error himself, goes a little bit deeper into the corner, loses a couple of lengths, so certainly wasn't prepared to send it up the inside. Maybe had that been the last lap, there'd have been a little bit more commitment in it, but Carl Cavers quite content for the moment to sit there, looking as though he's the quicker, trying to harry Rupert Laslett into a mistake. Now a gap does present itself on the inside at Woodcote, but actually Rupert Laslett there once more is able to move across and defend. Over the timing line they go now, down to Copse. Brake and turn into that right-hander. Still a very quick corner is Copse, and as they go through that now, starting lap 6, the margin between them, 0.170 of a second as they started this lap. So it's a great little battle between the two. Now, they are lapping in the 2:14s. Behind them is Tim Krosvik, who is lapping in the 2:16. So they're not holding each other up sufficiently to be caught. So the pace is decent enough. They're never going to catch the pros doing this, but that's not the aim. The aim is to secure honours in class. Down to the end of Vale, though, comes Charles Clark, who has now done the fastest lap, and he's looking as though this is going to be a second victory of the weekend for him. And actually, right now, he's making it look pretty easy because he's edging away from Matthew Armstrong. He's doing a little bit like we saw in the earlier race. Once you get to the second half, just starts to turn up the wick and build on that gap consistently. Carl Cavers still on the attack for AM honours. Down to the end of Vale. Brake, go left, go right. Rupert Laslett again just a touch deeper into the end of Vale. And Carl Cavers needs the inside line if he can get it, but he can't because Rupert Laslett covers off the apex of the corner. He may not be quite as quick as Cavers, but he knows how to defend, and that's one very important thing that Ginetta Racing teaches you. Up now towards Abbey. Go right, then flick left at Farm. And at that part of the circuit, so Rupert Laslett gains a length, maybe a little bit more, over Carl Cavers. Sits in the middle of the road coming up towards Village, meaning that it's harder for Carl to go left or right to find a way through. So Rupert Laslett here being good in terms of his defence, but goes deep into the loop, rattles it up over the curb, and that should give Carl Cavers a chance to challenge if there's a gap on the inside at Aintree. He's up the curb. Rupert Laslett goes wide, but he's got to keep his foot absolutely nailed to the floor now. Cavers has got the inside line and should get the place here, but Rupert Laslett will brake as late as he dares. But Carl Cavers, surely he's going to go through. Yes, Rupert Laslett tried to turn in, couldn't because Carl Cavers was alongside him, and so Cavers goes into the lead of the AM class with just over 6.5 minutes to go, and he's on target maybe for 3 out of 3. And Rupert Laslett gave it again another really, really good shot at defending, but it came to naught for him. They race at the end of the month at Thruxton, supporting the British Touring Car Championship, which is another very fast circuit, of course, and it's somewhere that both have raced in the past, so the battle will continue there, assuming Carl Cavers now gets away into the distance, heading up towards the Beckett's S's now, coming out of Maggots for the 7th time. There's the race leader, Charles Clark. He's 1.969 seconds to the good, so he's not quite at his winning margin from the earlier race just yet, but not for the want of trying. And Matthew Armstrong getting a bit frustrated because after yesterday's win, he may have gone into today feeling pretty confident, but Charles Clark has risen to the occasion. Harry Foster not quite delivering what might have been anticipated. He looked good earlier on in the race, getting up in terms of lap time with the others, but now not being able to stay on the tail of Matthew Armstrong. And the gap between the two, 1.8 seconds in the first sector. Again, Harry Foster quicker in the second, he just loses a fraction of time. So there he is. It is, as it has been all weekend, a 1-2-3 for Team Parker Racing. And up towards the right-hander of Village, they now turn. So hard on the brakes, go right. There is Harry Foster. Omnipresent dad Nick here to cheer him on, as he's been a great supporter of his two sons racing, and to Wellington Straight now goes Foster. There is a rather lonely Steve Roberts then. The Red Line Racing entry blasts its way onto Wellington Straight, but you can see how much time has been lost there against the top three. 5 more minutes on the clock. This will be the end of lap 7, and Carl Cavers has not yet got away, has he, from Rupert Laslett there, because Rupert wants his class lead back, and he's really on his toes heading up towards the loop. So Carl Cavers leads it, but he's not getting away as they come now on to Wellington Straight once more. The race leader, Charles Clark, has just gone over the line, which gives you an idea of the pace that the pros have over the AMs and how the gaps have widened. Armstrong this time is 2.1 seconds back as Laslett breaks late coming into Brooklands. Carl Cavers then remains in charge in the AM battle, turns his way through the right-hander of Luffield, and now onto the power up towards Woodcote and up towards the end of the lap. Over the timing line they go. The margin between the two leading AM drivers, 0.578 of a second. Tim Kresnik in the background, not really catching, and then Jason Pelosi fourth ahead of John White. So these two continue to dominate the class. Number 77, Charles Clark, out of Stowe. Makes that run down Vale once more. This is lap 8, 2.1 seconds clear last time. He's done the fastest lap of the race. And it's all heading a little bit like race 2 here when he was on pole, did the win and the fastest lap. And the triple whammy looks to be heading his way once more, although there's no point for pole in this because it was based on the race 2 result rather than a qualifying time. There is Matthew Armstrong in second spot, but after yesterday's win, today he's just not been able to stay with Charles Clark at all, and the frustration will be there. No doubt he'll bounce back at Thruxton, but giving away points in the championship at this early stage, not good news, especially when Charles Clark is looking so strong. Theo Edgerton, the reigning champion, just to make the point, has graduated to Carrera Cup GB for this season, and it's another feather in the cap of this Cayman series that drivers are progressing up the Porsche Motorsport ranks, and also that equally there are always new drivers coming in for this 3rd season of the Porsche Visit Cayman Islands Sprint Challenge Great Britain. Race leaders down towards Brooklands with 2 minutes and 40 seconds or so on the clock, so this will be the end of lap 8. There's time enough for 2 more laps for Charles Clark. The flying lap at the moment is a 2:11, and there he is. So yes, by a handful of seconds really, he will be able to squeeze 2 more laps out of the race. As through he comes, breaks the beam now as he goes over the line. That is Harry Foster, still in 3rd place, and still a bit frustrated, I would have thought, because he just can't get anywhere near enough to the back of Matthew Armstrong to challenge. It's still hovering around the 2-second mark. In 4th place, Steve Roberts, again just slightly in no man's land, ahead of Matt Greenwood there, who is 5th. Matt came out of the Junior Fiesta Championship, going then from those cars into Brit Car, and now into the Cayman Championship this year, into the Porsche Sprint Challenge GB. Behind him is Toby Trice, another Ginetta graduate, and then it's Carl Cavers ahead of Rupert Laslett by just under a second now. So that margin is slightly wider than it was. There is Matt Greenwood in the Race Lab entry. Works his way out of the Beckett's S's. Race Lab, another team making its debut in a Porsche Championship this year. Dan Jean's team. They ran the car of Matt Greenwood and also William Twire. It was only started last year, so making a big step up for this season. Matt Greenwood there drops down towards Stowe, turns right. Great looking livery on that car as he hustles it out of Stowe, down Vale once more. So the race leader to squeeze 1 more lap out of this race, Charles Clark. He makes his way from Club up towards Abbey. This is Matt Greenwood running in 5th place, which is where he has been for the previous 2 races, in fact. Rides the curb on the outside of Club Corner. Charles Clark is already up at Village, turns right, and it's been a really impressive weekend for him, this. The lessons of the last season and a bit put into good practice out of the loop now. So the clock's going to hit 0 just after he crosses the line. There in 2nd place is Matthew Armstrong, and to the eye, the gap between him and Harry Foster is down a little bit. Now, last time, it was a quicker lap by Armstrong than Foster. In the 1st sector, fractionally faster Foster. In the 2nd, fractionally faster Foster. But we're talking fraction. So again, even though he's a little bit nearer, not enough to think about making a move. Down to Brooklands they come. The one car at the back of the pack is out of William Twire, but I don't think he's going to have to fear being lapped in this race as they're going through Harry Foster now accelerates from Luffield up towards the timing line, over which is about to go Charles Clark then to start his last lap now with 17 seconds on the clock. Second remains Matthew Armstrong, Harry Foster third. The gap is smaller, second to third, than it is between the two leaders, but even now onto the last lap, 1.4 seconds the margin. Last time around, Harry Foster was a chunk quicker than Matthew Armstrong, so the gap is certainly down, but I don't think it's down enough to give him a realistic chance of a challenge. That's Carl Cavers on for 3 out of 3 in the AMS, and although Rupert Laslett is still chasing, he's dropped too much time now. There is Carl Cavers heading towards the line. Through he will go. So down towards Copse Corner, and a really good start to the season for Carl. 3 race wins. Turns his way now out of Copse as into Stowe, such is the dominance of him, is Charles Clark. Turns with the car sliding ever so slightly out of Stowe, down Vale now. Quick check of the mirror proves that he's made an even bigger gap over Matthew Armstrong in this race than he had in the earlier one at the start of the day. So another dominant performance being offered up by Charles Clark, also by Team Parker Racing as he comes out of club. Past the Formula 1 pits, past the wing, the building on the right-hand side of the road, and now up towards the right and then the left of Abbey and Farm. For the last time then, Charles Clark turns through. This is the left of Farm now, and he's on target for win number 2 of the day, of the season, and his career in these cars, and to increase his championship advantage over a really frustrated Matthew Armstrong, whose pace yesterday was good after a really good battle that he had with Charles Clark, but Charles once more proving once he's ahead, he's able to build that lead, and he comes now into Aintree for the last time, accelerates onto Wellington Straight. Wide up the curb. Will grab a gear. There is William Tawire, who's going to start his last lap. Harry Foster still charging along in third place. Was 2,000 slower than Armstrong in the first sector, was about a 10th slower in the second, so he's not going to catch him. But Matthew Armstrong equally ain't going to catch this man, because Charles Clark sets the car up now for Luffield. He's about to get back onto the power to make the run up towards the timing line, and so it's going to be a second win of the weekend out of the 3 races for Charles Clark for Team Parker Racing. Over the line, checkered flag is waved. Charles Clark wins at Silverstone from pole and with the fastest lap. Dominant display. Part 2 from Charles Clark, who won earlier on in the day. Matthew Armstrong, yesterday's winner, is second, and it is Harry Foster taking third. Steve Roberts comes through a bit lonely in 4th place, ahead of Matt Greenwood. And then Toby Trice is going to round out the top 6. 7th will be this man, Carl Cavers, although he's a little bit deep over the curb on the outside of Brooklands, but I think he's got enough in hand, yes he has, over Rupert Laslett not to fear being caught in the AM contest. Comes now up towards the right-hander of Woodcote Corner. He'll go over the timing line, and it's 3 out of 3 in the AM class for Carl Cavers then. P1 yet again in class for Carl Cavers as the pit board reflects that. Through he goes to win the class from Rupert Laslett, and then Tim Kresick in third. Jason Pelosi is set for 4th ahead of John White, who steered clear of the gravel this time, and William Tawire for 6th in the AMS. But it's all about Charles Clark today. He keeps on winning, he keeps on starting from pole, and he keeps on setting fastest laps. It's been a really impressive display, and he was quick last year, but has marked himself out this weekend as being very much a potential champion. So a job well done as Charles Clark makes his way back towards Parc Fermé, and Carl Cavers will be well pleased with his 3 AM wins, and Rupert Laslett oh so frustrated. But you've got to say, he gives it his all, does Rupert, and it's a real asset that he's in the championship this year. And I think the fact that they've had such good fights this weekend does bode well for that class within the championship. The fact that straight away, newcomer Rupert Laslett is able to take the fight to the more experienced Cayman racer Carl Cavers, very encouraging indeed. So let's look at the results then of the 3rd race of the weekend. A win for Charles Clark from Matthew Armstrong and Harry Foster 3rd. Stephen Roberts 4th ahead of Matt Greenwood and Toby Trice. Then 7th and back, the AMS, won by Carl Cavers ahead of Rupert Laslett and Tim Kresick. Jason Pelosi 10th ahead of John White, and then William Tawire. So that is how they cross the line at the end of the 3rd race of the weekend. Let's have another look at the highlights of it, which was largely won by Charles Clark, if you like, off the start. It was another good getaway, converting that 1-by-1 staggered grid to his advantage, and he had the advantage into Copse, and he had the advantage for the rest of the race. The field accelerating up towards the Beckett's S's for the first time, with Matt Greenwood there trying to make a move against Steve Roberts, but it didn't work out for him, and so he had to slot in behind as the battles raged on lower down the order. best fight early on was for the AM lead. Rupert Laslett versus Carl Cavers, just as we'd had in race 1 and just as we'd had in race 2. And Rupert Laslett it was ahead as he turned his way through Stowe Corner. Out of club, he was still ahead, but the pressure, as ever, getting greater and greater from Carl Cavers as the race wore on. Harry Foster was doing his best to chase after Matthew Armstrong for second, but the gap just was not coming down as Carl Cavers eventually made his move after a small error by Rupert Laslett was made up at the loop, and he got the job done into Brooklands. Charles Clark, though, was heading for his second win of the day, and in rather dominant fashion, with William Twire just escaping being lapped up the road ahead of him. The checker flag was made ready, and it was win number 2 for Charles Clark at Silverstone in this opening weekend in the Porsche Visit Cayman Islands Sprint Challenge, Great Britain. So a very happy Charles Clark, who will make his way to the Silverstone podium. And the next stop is Thruxton at the end of May, when the championship hooks up with the British Touring Car Championship. It takes the place of Carrera Cup GB on the support programme. So the drivers then to make their way up to the podium. You can see there Matthew Armstrong, a little bit frustrated with only second place again, but a win yesterday was a good result. And Harry Foster a third. And he'll make a happy man, I think, with a full season in these cars for GT experience. Interesting to see the way that the Foster brothers, one's very much gone the single-seater route now in the States, and Harry seemingly going very much the GT option as well. Matthew Armstrong gets his hair sorted out before he makes his way to the podium. So there, the drivers ready to make their way to the podium. But none of them seemingly terribly interested in getting there at the moment, which is frustrating. So the Porsche officials will need to suddenly whisk them up the stairs. Harry Foster discussing his race with the Team Parker engineers. Background, Stuart Parker with the spectacles on comes in to survey any possible damage. Have a good look at the front of one of the cars there. So the podium is ready, but I think, oh yes, the drivers are now being encouraged to go. Harry Foster needs to go with them. One of life's mysteries, how difficult it is to get drivers to go to a podium. You would think if they've just done really well in a race, they'd be absolutely itching to go and celebrate, but seldom does it happen swiftly. So the top 3 AMs, the top 3 pros, and we'll see which of the 2 classes is going to be brought forward first, as they're the 3 Team Parker racing cars out of the pro category. Make their way from the foot of the race control building. So drivers are ready, one hopes, trophies are ready. And this third race for the Porsche Visit Cayman Islands Sprint Challenge GB then is about to confirm the AM podium first, with Tim Kresick coming out first for third place, a third. Rupert Laslett steps forward for a third second of the weekend. And as Ian Fletcher, Championship Manager, hands over the trophies, the top step will go the way of Carl Cavers, who has yet again proved that he is the man to beat in the AM class. So it's good to have 2 newcomers to the championship on that podium. And the top 3 being shepherded together for photographs, which these days are rather more relevant because you can see who's on them. We don't have to worry about people wearing masks anymore. And look down to other snappers in the pit lane. And all is good. So applause for Carl Cavers, for Rupert Laslett and for Tim Kresick as the top 3 in AM. And they keep the champagne, spray that later on or drink that when they get home. And that then means that we have the top 3 pros ready to step forward. Trophies are there, the champagne bottles are brought forward as well. And so Harry Foster will step forward for third place onto the podium. Then for second, Matthew Armstrong. So 3 thirds for Harry, 2 seconds and a win for Matthew Armstrong, and it's going to be a second and 2 wins for Charles Clark, who will be brought forward shortly for the top step of the podium. But Matthew Armstrong first up, comes to the podium for second place. And Charles Clark is summoned forward to stand on the top step. And a very happy man he is too. And he's looked the real deal today, hasn't he? Last year he was not quite as quick as Theo Edgerton or Jack Bartholomew, for example, but he's certainly stepped up, as in fairness, as Matthew Armstrong, to be one of the pace setters in the championship this year. So from Team Parker Racing, Charles Clark, Matthew Armstrong, Harry Foster celebrate on the podium at the end of this final race of the weekend in the Porsche Visit Cayman Islands Sprint Challenge GB.
2 wins and a second, Charles. Good day.
So good weekend for Charles Clark, and we'll see whether he is as dominant and as successful at Thruxton over the weekend of the 28th and 29th of May, when the action will continue. But for now, from a sunny Silverstone, it's goodbye.